Hasbro announced they're going to create their own D&D video game in-house, but will it be the next Baldur's Gate 3 or another Dark Alliance disaster?
Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
In a recent interview with Bloomberg, Hasbro CEO Chris Cox mentioned that not only was the company still committed to its goal of spending $1 billion on video game production, it was going to be producing a new D&D video game entirely in-house, which brings the grand total of D&D video games apparently in production now up to 5. But is that really a good idea? Why not take a second to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and then let's dive into why Hasbro's decision to develop in-house may be a major problem. First of all, let's just look at the history of D&D video games. Outside of Baldur's Gate 3, which was created by the very well-established Larian Studios with a history of award-winning work, they've largely been remasters of old titles like Neverwinter Nights Enhanced Edition, or failed mobile games like Warriors of Waterdeep or Dungeons & Dragons Arena of War in the last decade. And of course there is the biggest flop of them all, the critical and commercial failure that was Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance. Besides the surprising resilience of their Neverwinter MMORPG, and of course the massive success of Baldur's Gate 3, it's been a pretty bleak decade for D&D video games, and the two big success stories both came from two veteran studios in Cryptic and Larian. When Hasbro tried to go with an in-house team last time, we got Invoke Studios, owned by Wizards of the Coast, working on Dark Alliance, which as previously mentioned, was a pretty massive commercial and critical failure. So why is Hasbro insisting on going back to in-house development for another major D&D video game instead of simply paying a well-established company like Larian to create their next Baldur's Gate 3 style success? The answer is, unsurprisingly, money. While Baldur's Gate 3 made Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro a huge amount of money, it was actually only a percentage of what it could have made if they had fully owned the rights to the game and the team that created it. So in Hasbro's mind, why should they only get the $90 million in licensing fees from the games when they could get all of the profit from every game sold, with Steam claiming $650 million in BG3 sales alone last year? With no AAA studio like Larian taking home the lion's share of those profits, they would stand to make a ton of money on their next AAA game. The problem is, that assumes the game they make in-house will be a success, and you only have to look back 2 years to Dark Alliance to see that is not exactly what their track record suggests will happen. So is this simply another case of greed overshadowing common sense at Hasbro? And will another Dark Alliance level disaster hurt the D&D brand and potentially convince Hasbro not to keep spending on video game production? Chris Cox says the company is spending over $100 million of that $1 billion in the coming year to develop and create new video games. But if all that leads to another Dark Alliance sized misfire, does that funding get pulled back by a now nervous Hasbro, leaving other D&D games shelved or in limbo? Either way, nothing Hasbro has done in the past decade shows any indication they are capable of creating something on the level of Baldur's Gate 3. And heck, we still don't even have a public beta of Project Sigil, their virtual tabletop which ran notoriously poorly the last time press had access to try it out. So what do you think? Do you trust Hasbro to create the next big hit D&D game in-house? Or should they just be happy with their licensing fees and letting a much more established company take a shot at making the next Baldur's Gate 3? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and please don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons.